Hey everyone out there, coming at you from the jungles of Costa Rica. No, I'm just kidding. I did live in Costa Rica for a while, but I'm not in Costa Rica right now. I might have like a coconut microphone if I did. But no, you're listening to the Tim Laskus Show, and I'm Tim Laskus. This is episode 54, and I'm in good old South Carolina. And before I get into today's awesome guest, I want to share with you one of our cool sponsors, Design Crowd. If you're looking for a fresh new look, you need a logo that just pops or get rid of that boring one, Design Crowd is the answer. They design not just good, but great logos for people who are looking for stuff for their website. If they have a book cover that's coming out, they need a logo that just grabs your attention. If you have a banner or business cards or something, they did the logo for my mic flag, the one that you see on iTunes, and I just love it. I get lots of compliments. So anyway, they will go out and crowdsource your logo idea. You'll get a bunch back, and you get to decide which one you want. And you don't pay a dime until you choose it, and you just hang out and just say, no, I don't like that, don't like that. They'll keep bringing it to you until they get it right. Then you choose it, and you get your money back if you don't like it after that. How cool is that? Design Crowd. So if you want a discount on a design from designers who do it right, head on over to my website, timlaskus.com. Click on the resources page, and you'll see Design Crowd link right there. And just go there. You'll get your discount from using my link, and that'll be great. So now on to today's featured guest, who is Jared Angaza. Jared is a strategist and a philanthropist, if I could say that. Half the time I can't talk, but he's a philanthropist. And for over 20 years, he's helped create strategies and brands and campaigns and events basically all over the world. He coaches and consults for individuals and governments around the globe. I mean, he's worked on campaigns such as Save Darfur, Human Rights Watch, Freedom House, USAID. He even consulted for the governments of United States, Nigeria, Rwanda, and Kenya. Man, he's done a lot. He's got some great stories, great information to share. So I know you want to stick around and listen to this one. Enjoy.
The Tim Laskus Show, in search of entrepreneurial gold. Tim digs deep into the minds of his guests. Entertaining, down to earth, and informative. Now, here's your host, Tim Laskus.
Welcome, everyone. Today's featured guest is Jared Angaza. Jared, thank you for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Tim.
Hey, you were telling me you love to, in your spare time, look up at the stars and just kind of gaze. What's that all about? Or is it a little more in-depth than that?
Well, possibly, yes. I am fascinated by our cosmos, and I spend a lot of my time studying cosmology, space, and
not cosmetology.
Not cosmetology as much, no, but
okay.
Cosmology, and I have been fascinated because I am a student of of human behavior and of how we interact with our planet and cosmos. I am very interested in our interconnectedness. And if you are studying science and you are interested in interconnectedness, you will ultimately end up in the world of quantum physics. So I end up studying a lot of quantum physics, and it's just completely fascinating to me. It's where everything kind of comes together.
Wow, that's some deep stuff, and yeah, and it's mind blowing. I'm sure, but let's keep it simple. Are there aliens out there? Are we the only ones on a planet?
Well,
what are your thoughts about that?
With millions and millions and millions of other galaxies, let alone all the planets and stars within those galaxies, I think it might be the height of human arrogance to think that we are the only beings, sentient beings, if you will, on a planet. That would just seem much more odd than if we were the only people alive, the only, and who knows if it's people, if it's alien. The thing is, the term aliens just means someone that's not from here. We also call people from other countries aliens. So
yeah,
really all that's getting at is maybe not the presence of little green men, but just the presence of someone else.
Something else. So there may be something in Area 51. You're saying that there could be something.
I'm hanging on to hope. Yeah. I find it fascinating that there could have been, yes.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, that's cool. Well, we could have a whole alien show. Maybe we'll plan that for the future. But for right now, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself professionally. What are you currently working on, Jared?
Well, I am usually referred to as a brand architect, and I build brands from a strategy level. Like, what does this mean? Why are you doing this? What is, who are you trying to speak to? What are their, thoughts? What are their behaviors? What are their fears and motivations and things like that? So I study a lot of human behavior in an effort to create great brands that connect with the human spirit. I am also a philanthropist, and maybe I should have said that one first. But it affects everything that I do. My philanthropy kind of translates from the original words to it comes from philos to it's the love of humans. And so I kind of bring the love of humans and that human connection into all of the brands that I develop that help to foster community and harmony with our planet, and even on into self-actualization and so on. And I am currently working on launching a new creative studio around all of that with a friend of mine, Jamie J. And I'm working with him to build an entity that is more inclusive in terms of all of the services that we provide with branding and marketing and website development and all that.
Well, that's exciting. And I've always been intrigued with brands, and I know there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that most people do not even know. I mean, they would be surprised at what goes into building a brand, from the colors and the logos and just the photos that they instill. What is a company that has just branded itself so well that really just amazes you? Is there one that comes to mind?
Yeah. I mean, I might give two quick examples. One that in terms of branding and creating a brand experience and a reputation and a relationship, I don't know that you could top Coca-Cola. In terms of what they've done around the world. And I'm speaking as a person that's lived all over the world and recognizing the ever-presence of Coca-Cola and some of the things that they've done and things that they've done in Africa, even philanthropically and so on, that kind of speak to the brand. I really appreciate the way that they've done that. And I don't use any Coca-Cola products ever. I don't even remember the last time I had a Coke, but
So
I love
you're
that
not
brand.
endorsing the product. You just are amazed by the
Just
brand.
from a brand perspective, it is impressive. Now, the second one I would mention is Virgin. I'm a big fan of all things Virgin, and I think that they've done an amazing job of just with Branson's influence of creating that human connection and centering everything they do around the humans that they serve. And they've done the best job, I think, of saying, like, here's people that need to be served. How do we make this better for them and create an amazing brand experience around that? And then keep doing it consistently. And they've just done an amazing job of that.
For sure. And I still recall when he had that can. He was driving that tank in down Times Square. I don't know how many years ago that was, and that was just an amazing kind of event. I guess that's more maybe marketing. I don't know, but
You don't forget it, do you?
I haven't forgot it. Right. I just remember seeing that photo of him in that tank, and I'm like, what? There's the tank, and it's in Times Square. Richard Branson's in it. Like it was just
Yeah.
mind blowing, and it was amazing. And then I read an article one time that I think it was after he'd started his airline or whatever it was, and he flew, I think, from coast to coast, and then when they landed, he didn't jump off the plane or whatnot. He stayed and he helped the cleaning crew to clean up and picking up papers and stuff. And I'm like, that's amazing. This
That's
guy,
Branson.
yeah, he gets it, and
Yep.
it really it stands out, in my mind. But going back to Coke, what is it that Coke has or Coca-Cola, Coke has done so well to create that brand that they have that's so powerful?
Part of what I appreciate about them is that when you, for instance, if you're standing in, Atlanta, or you're standing in California, or you're standing in Sri Lanka or Nairobi or whatever, and all these are all places I've stood, and each one of them has a different, I don't mean this literally, but figuratively, flavor of branding. It has a different kind of vibe, and that vibe is connected to the culture in that particular area. We have little microcultures all throughout America, and then obviously cultures all throughout the rest of the world. And there are they've done such a great job of getting into an area, listening to the people that would be most likely to buy their product, and then catering their brand experience around those people. And really at that point it's a marketing experience. And just relating to them, and making it about them, and making the brand about the people that they serve, instead of just saying, this is what we do and you should buy it. They're saying, we make what you love, and we've been listening to you, and so we know what you love. And some of that is kind of the ethereal brand experience, and some of that is the actual product.
Right, right. So they're connecting down with, I mean, every individual that's in those communities that uses those products, and that's fantastic. And what is some of the work that? They're absolutely, they're listening, and a lot of companies don't. They just say, here it is, like it, take it, buy it.
Yeah.
And whatnot, and they take it a step further. So what is it that you do specifically with brands? How do companies approach you, and what are some problems they've had that you've helped solve?
A lot of times people are coming in, I do a few different levels where I have an idea and I want it to be extraordinary, in this extraordinary business and brand experience and so on. Can you help me create that? And so I come in and help build a strategy, starting with, their desires around building this business and what they want it to do for them and the lifestyle they want it to afford them and so on. And then understanding, okay, what is the impact that you want to make with this business on other people's lives? Even if it's just serving them a great, tasty product or whatever, that's great. If it brings happiness, and isn't detrimental to the body and whatever, I appreciate that. That's another conversation to be had about Coca-Cola. Anyway, I'm starting at that level and then building out from there and saying, okay, let's develop a strategy that's going to be long lasting. I'm a long haul kind of guy in most of my work. And so that's a brand creation kind of scenario. Then there's a lot of where I end up doing a rebrand where somebody has a company. Maybe it's been in existence for 3 years or 30 years or whatever. And they're saying, look, we've got a big tangled ball here of stuff. Some of it we want to keep, some of it we're not sure. What do we do with all this? And I help kind of untangle everything, do some problem solving, figure out the essence of what they're really trying to get at, extracting that essence, and then turning that into kind of the core of the brand experience. That's probably the short nutshell version of what I end up doing. But it is really about understanding the business owner and the people that they want to serve, extracting the essence out of that situation, and then figuring out how to relay that to their audience or customer or client in a way that compels them to act or change their behavior. If it doesn't compel them to do something, then I've failed.
I guess that's the key term, compel. You want to be able to compel people to take an action, to do something.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Now, how long have you been doing this, Jared?
Well, I had an unorthodox path here, and I started in philanthropy. And so when starting in the philanthropic world, I was kind of coming from the human connection, standpoint, and then as I went through that experience, I realized the importance of understanding human behavior. I was trying to compel people to change, to change their behavior as an activist. And then I realized that really what I'm doing is I'm developing strategies, I'm problem solving, and I'm storytelling. And I thought, well, that might be very applicable in the business world. Hey, I got to pay the bills. So I started doing that. And really that transition started to happen in real full effect, probably about, 12, 13 years ago. But in terms of the journey, it's been about 20 years of kind of developing that, what I call brand alchemy at this point, and kind of taking all these parts and then creating something that is greater than the sum of those parts.
So you've been doing this for quite a while. So for the listeners who are thinking about taking that jump, that leap into entrepreneurship, what are a couple of tips you would offer them that may help them along the way?
Well, I think one of the things that's so important is and I would say this if you're an activist or if you are an entrepreneur or anything, any combination or whatever, hold fast to your principles, but be adaptable in your methodology. um, I think it's something that you have to be a successful entrepreneur. You've got to stay teachable. You've got to be adaptable, roll with the punches, and all that. But still, I think you can do that. I know you can do that because I do it every day. To hold fast to the principles of why you're doing it and what you want to accomplish, and then be adaptable as you move forward. That would be the first tip, I guess. And then maybe the second one is I'm a perfectionist by nature, I think, but I've learned along the way to, with the influence of people like Seth Godin, to ship it, get it out the door, and start creating, even if it's not perfect, if, whatever. You have to know where the line is, but I I like to create live. And as I start creating ideas live online, I get that refinement very quickly. And because I get feedback and I get, I don't know, it's something beautiful. There's a bit of magic that happens, I guess, when you're willing to put it out there and just start creating. It's like painting a picture in front of an audience, and there's a pressure there that's created that can be really beautiful if you allow it to be.
So you're
So
not really waiting for it to be perfect. You're putting it out there and just running with it.
yeah, which is interesting for a guy like me that tends to be much more of a perfectionist. And I spent a lot of my life in that realm and consequently didn't ship a lot. I didn't get a lot out the door because of that. And now I get a lot out the door and have some fumbles and whatever along the way. And I also have some just diamonds that I never would have gotten out there had I not been willing to go out and just start doing it. Just start taking steps forward.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up on the details. Even if people are thinking, well, what about my brand? I want to make sure I have the right colors, the right logo, and the right website, and the right this, and the right wording, and all of that will just hold you back. And for many people, it just keeps them stuck in their tracks.
Yeah, I mean, and there's I create brands, so I do believe that there's kind of a foundational little box of stuff you need to have in place, like why you doing this, what's your vision, what's your, write out all the elements of your target audience, and start to understand them, but when you have those things in place, your vision and your audience, and the understanding of your audience. Really, once those things are in place, man, it's time to start playing in the field, and getting out of the lab. And I think the more you're willing to do that, certainly the quicker your project is likely to take off. But also, there's kind of that richness in the human interaction that comes into it that allows you to think of things and develop things you may never have thought of on your own.
Those are great tips. And when did you realize that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? It sounds like you've been doing this for a while, but what was it? Did you have an aha moment? And what helped you to make that initial step?
Well, in my case, I was raised in an entrepreneurial family, so it was almost expected to be an entrepreneur. When I was a kid, I wanted a guitar. I was like 8 years old, so I spent an entire summer pushing a lawnmower from like the second rung. I couldn't even reach the top handle. I had to tape down the accelerator and things like that. I'm sure that didn't pass any child safety rules, but I did it. And I bought a guitar when I was a kid, and then I had a bike repair business when I was like 14, or up until I was like 14, and I bought a car with that money, and so on and so on and so on. So I've always been an entrepreneur. My father teaches entrepreneurs, and he has a very large business that's centered around teaching entrepreneurs how to do business. So I was kind of raised in that, and I was in the music industry and so on. I'm in Nashville, it's part of, it's in their blood. But I've been doing it my whole life, and I've had a series of aha moments along the way, I should say, I guess.
Now, so would you say in your case that your kind of entrepreneurship is more nature or nurture?
Well, you're talking to a guy that studies quantum physics and science all day long. So, in terms of the nature versus nurture Darwinian conversation, I have this one often, and I am a very, very big believer in both. That we have things that are innately within us that we carry from, from our parents and from generations before and so on, that kind of set the tone for some programming. But I do believe more than anything that it is the nurturing that kind of crafts who we are and the trajectory we take and so on as humans. So I think that without going into too much detail there, I think that the nurture part of it is the most important part. And if you look back generationally in my family, my grandparents were Amish. So maybe you could call that entrepreneurialism. But I
Sure.
think we definitely went a different route further down the line.
For sure. So did you work for someone before you decided to go out on your own? And did you say, goodness, I can't stand this crap. I need to get out there and do my own thing.
To some degree, I did just as a little bit. I worked like maintenance and security at the church that I grew up at, which was a mega church. I'm in Nashville. It was like 6,000 people. So I worked there and I did the 9 to 5 that ended up like 12 to 16-hour days often. And I did that for a couple of years when I was in my teens, really, before I was even out of high school. And at that time, yeah, I realized I was blessed with a great boss and people that I worked around. They were really nice. But in terms of the lifestyle, the 9 to 5, and overtime hours and all that kind of stuff, I was like, yeah, that's not for me. And that was really, I mean, I've maybe worked for somebody maybe 2 or 3 times in my life. And if you put all the years together, it maybe totaled up to, maybe 2 years of working for other people over the last 30.
Okay. Now, when you were growing up, did you ever have this kind of sit down talk with anyone in your family about money and finances and, this is how you manage money and this is how you make money and all that good stuff?
Are you familiar with Dave Ramsey?
Yes. Uh-huh.
I guess so. He came to my father when I was about 10 years old for business advice, and my dad encouraged him to write a book, which is called Financial Peace. And we delivered that book out of our trunk with Dave. And I have spent most of my life growing up alongside Dave Ramsey and his philosophies. So
Wow.
yes, I definitely had some financial planning discussions going on in my household.
Well, that's excellent. Yeah, I mean, to be friends with Dave Ramsey and to have that going on, that's a great side story. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Well,
it is.
that's
Dave's story is in my DNA at this point.
well, that's wonderful. Well, since you've been doing this for quite a while, and I know it's not always easy. On the outside, everyone kind of looks at entrepreneurs as, oh, they've got it made, they're making tons of money and all of this stuff. But can you tell the listeners a little bit about a stressful situation mentally for you and how you were able to cope?
Oh wow, I think the most. This is going to sound funny coming from a branding and marketing guy, but the most stress I have ever had in business, and I don't stress much, but is from having to promote myself, especially as an entrepreneurial, as a consultant, where I'm not promoting like the company that I'm with, an agency or something. That's easier for me to do. But when it's just myself, just promoting myself as a speaker or as a, as a consultant or whatever. Oh man, I can't think of any things I despise more than having to go out there and talk about how I'm great, use my services and so on. And that it's been tough for me. And there have been times when I've had to try to figure out better ways to do that, when I've had to change the story that I'm telling in my mind about what that process actually is and so on. And that's been healing and helpful. And honestly, and this may sound a bit unorthodox as well, but over the years, I've realized that as an entrepreneur, you can be an entrepreneur and still work with a team. You can be an entrepreneur and still work with a company and so on and so on. I have now, as I mentioned, I'm launching this creative studio with a friend of mine, and we're all remote. So we operate anywhere we are in the world, doesn't matter. We have clients all over the world. We have a team of 14 now. And it allows us to all be independent entrepreneurs, but to operate within our area of genius, our zone of genius, if you will, our area of expertise. So I get to sit in the lab and do what I love, creating brands. And then I am, but at the same time, I don't have to go out and sell myself necessarily because we have a team of people that does that very well.
So what is it about selling yourself? I mean, you sound like you're very competent and you enjoy kind of being behind a big brand or a big company that you're helping to be a, a big brand. But what is it about yourself that you think kind of holds you back, where you're kind of like, uh-oh, is it almost like that naked feeling, like exposed to, to the world?
I think some of it, honestly, is. I mean, I'm sure. Yes, yeah. I think that some of that is at play for sure. More than anything, I think it's part of my general kind of just. Maybe disdain's a bit of a harsh word, but for pop culture and that, I don't mean pop culture in general, but the, how should I say, the trends of promoting yourself, your product, your business, and doing this kind of constant, like, you gotta, I'm this different, I'm this much better, I'm this, and it's, I don't know. For me, it's like, if I'm going to spend time doing something, I'd rather be having a great conversation, or I'd rather be investing in relationships in some way, or doing some meaningful work. And the idea of taking time to just talk about how great I am, in hopes that that I'm going to catch a fish with that. It's always been kind of like, do I really have to do all that? And I realize it's a vital part of the game, and it's been the one area that I've had to really kind of dive into and study the most, and kind of figure out, why do I have this aversion to promoting myself, and so on and so on. And I think it's just because I'd rather be doing other stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I can really relate to that. And I'm sure the listeners out there may as well, that, there are times when I'm so sick of being sold.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go, it's buy this, buy that, do this. I got this program, I got this service, I got this product. And I'm just like, dude, stop it. And so, but when it comes time for me to be able to market myself, I kind of have that like distaste for all of that stuff. So it makes it very difficult.
Hmm.
And I think for me, what's been the most helpful is just to not necessarily sell my service, but just to be myself, just be my kind of goofy self, and just tell my story, and just kind of like maybe more of a soft sell, I guess. And I feel more comfortable with that. Um, and so I think people, who are listening may also have kind of that trepidation about, oh, I really don't want to have to sell myself. And so there are different ways to be able to do that. It's kind of the hard sell, or the soft sell. And for me, it's just, just tell my story. And I think people just kind of connect with that the most.
Absolutely.
So what would you say has been one of the most fulfilling moments? Now, I know you've done a lot. We didn't even get into some of the stuff, the work you've done in other countries, but what's been the most fulfilling moment of your journey so far?
Well, well, it's that, man. That's tough. I've had a lot of different trajectories, or a lot of different kind of. I feel like I've lived a lot of lives in terms of different things that I've done, but I, I don't know if I'm thinking back about like one of the most fulfilling moments, and that's maybe not say the most, but one of the most. When I was living in Rwanda, I had just met a lovely lady that became my wife and mother to my children eventually. And we were running an ethical fashion label together called Keza out of Rwanda, working with high-end fashion groups in New York and LA and so on. And we did a fashion show here in Nashville, actually. And it was at one of the top nightclubs and blah blah blah. We did this fashion show. It involved people. It involved fashion products that we had created in concert with Rhode Island School of Design students, RISD students, top fashion school in the U.S. And we had kind of the who's who of fashion there, and we did this amazing runway and great models and like the whole thing. So it involved people and art and music and purpose. We did it for a purpose, to serve these women that were creating the products in Rwanda and so on. Man, the whole thing, the energy of it all, it was amazing. I still kind of go back to that memory and tap into that energy from time to time, because it was such a great moment. It brought all these things that I love in together into one room for one beautiful moment, for a couple of hours. And it was a great experience.
Well, it certainly sounds like it. And to do that in Rwanda, and I remember watching this Rwanda Hotel, the movie,
Yeah.
years ago, and it just stuck with me, and I just could not get over what had happened with this genocide in Rwanda. And I think, what were the two? It was the Tutsis, and who were the other side?
The Hutu.
The Hutu and the Tutsis, I guess, and they were kind of, jockeying for power and whatnot. And can you talk a little bit about what you've seen or heard while you were over there regarding that?
Intimately. I have an adopted Rwandan son, and he was born the year of the genocide. And I have lived through, the wake of that, through him vicariously, and then obviously through living in the country for 5 years as well. I'm a storyteller, and I understand the power of storytelling. And the story that we've been told about that one is very different from the reality, what was going on there. And it was very much a colonial situation in that Belgium and France then on the second half sort of orchestrated some how should we say, some unrest and conflict in that area, such that the country would remain dependent on their countries, and that resulted in the genocide. I don't believe there ever would have been a genocide between the two tribes because they weren't tribes. If you were a Hutu, it meant you owned land, and if you're a Tutsi, you owned cattle. That was it. It was just like saying carpenter and baker, until the colonials came in and turned it around and said, this actually means you have light skin and thin nose over in the Tutsi department, and the Hutus have the dark skin and the flat nose, and they just created division. Before the Belgians came in, there was never actually Germans and then Belgians and then French. There was never a caste system. There was never a racial division like that. So that was pretty highly orchestrated. And since then, those countries have been kind of pushed out of Rwanda, and they're working their way back towards peace. But it's been, there's a lot under the surface that's not being discussed, even in their, in their own culture and so on. So it's still a bit volatile, very peaceful as it is now, but volatile at the same time because a lot of things just haven't been dealt with.
So it sounds kind of like what you're saying is that movie didn't tell the whole story.
That film, and I saw it in the theater when it first came out. It told the story of a lot of what happened in terms of the coverage of what happened in the actual genocide, apart from the depiction of the hotel owner, Paul Rusesabagina. Everything was fairly accurate in terms of what went down in that film. Now, his portrayal was made to be much more of a hero than he actually was. He wasn't. He's actually been kicked out of the country and, right after that film, or right after his remarks that ended up in that film, and so on. And it has not been welcome in the country since. He was essentially selling space in the hotel to people that could afford it. So he wasn't exactly being as benevolent as he was made out to be. But otherwise, the film was fairly accurate in terms of the destruction and all that happened. And some of the other players, like Romeo Dallaire, the UN worker, he was the hero of all of that. He was an amazing guy, French guy. Interestingly enough, and actually he speaks French, but I think he's from Canada. So anyway, the film did a great job of telling kind of what happened in terms of the destruction. The other travesty here is that the film was told 12 years after the genocide. So the country had been peaceful for 12 years when that story came out, and still to this day, it's been 20 years or so now, people believe that Rwanda is this terrible, crazy place. And I assure you, it is the safest place in Africa right now.
Yeah, I think it's kind of similar to, what people think about Nicaragua. We travel there all the time, and it's very safe and no problems. But everyone, remembers the Ali North, the Iran-Contra affair with the rebels. And so people kind of still think the rebels are hiding out in the jungles there, and it's just not the case. But
well, the power of storytelling, right?
Yeah, the power of storytelling, getting back to storytelling. So, but it's fine because when we go there, it's not so over, populated with tourists, and the prices aren't astronomical as Costa Rica has gotten more expensive. So I'm kind of fine with it because it's, it's still kind of like going back in time.
Yeah.
But wow, your story and insight into Rwanda and Africa is amazing. And it sounds like you have a wonderful son now. And how old is he now?
Francois is just turned 22, or 23, actually, sorry.
Uh-huh. Well, that's awesome. And so that's great that you were able to, here it is, you have him and give them, all the opportunities that you can. And this has just been a fantastic interview with you, Jared. And we could probably go on and talk about so many things, from, all your travels in Rwanda and branding and big companies and tanks in Times Square with Richard Branson. But we've come to the end of the show. But before we go, Jared, tell the listeners where they can find you online, your website, and where on social media can they find you.
Yes, my website is jaredangaza.com, and I assume you'll have that in the show notes, see the spelling. And that's where I do a lot of my discussions about brand development and consulting. And I have another program called Conscious Philanthropy where I'm kind of working in that space to improve it. And then I have my podcast, INIPI Radio, INIPI Radio. And there's where I host a lot of discussions about philosophy and science and consciousness, politics, culture, and things like that, kind of using indigenous cultures and the sages and revolutionaries of our past to kind of bring us towards peace and unity today. And that's the idea, is to bring people back into alignment with nature and humanity and spirit. And I do that there at inipiradio.com. And those are the main projects that I'm working on at this point. And then with the launch of my new creative studio next week, and that's called Slapshot Studio, slapshotstudio.com. So I'll give you those 3 URLs for the show notes. But those are my 3 big projects right now, and I got all kinds of fun stuff going on.
Well, that's wonderful. So again, that's Jared Angaza, ANGAZA.com, Jared, Jared. And listen to him on his podcast, INIPI Radio, and go to slapshotstudio.com. Is that correct, Jared?
That's right, yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jared. You've been fantastic, and I look forward to watching you on your continued journey.
Thanks so much for having me, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Want more entrepreneurial tips? Go to timlaskus.com.